Well, hello and welcome to episode 133 of the Adoption and Fostering Podcast with me, Scott Casson Rennie, and
Al Coates. Hello.
Al Coates. Hello.
Al Coates.
It feels like ages since we've done this.
Yeah, we've had lots of guests, and that's nice. It's nice to have friends. But I don't know.
I don't know. I think when life gets too stressy. Well, yeah, but I think when life gets too stressy for us both, we just like to do something with no guests.
Yeah. Say what we really think.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, dearie me. Anyway, how are you, Mr. Coates?
Oh, I am. How can I say? The roller coaster of adoption has taken me to giddy new heights.
Are you living the dream?
I am living. I'm almost like the poster boy for contemporary adoption because everything is so fantastically awesome.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that, actually. I would absolutely agree with that description of yourself. Excellent.
And how's things with you?
Busy. I mean, in terms of adoption life, I've, as you know, taken a step back from it on socials.
How's that going?
Very strict. Very well, actually. Very well. Makes me feel better. So, you know.
And that's all that matters.
But to be honest with you, I don't have time to be on there anyway at the minute.
I know you're very busy, aren't you, with your opening and closing the doors on your advent calendar and polishing and I don't know what you're up to. Anyway.
Well, nor do I, yeah.
Do you know what I've discovered? About myself, and it's maybe... some people might call it trolling. Some people might just call it creative emailing. I'm not sure. So I haven't used your email. After you mentioned it, Elaine said it might be illegal for me to email on your behalf.
Yes.
Slightly dubious, questionable morality about that. What I've discovered is about 4:30 on a Friday, there's one of two places I'm usually in. So I'm either on a train going home or or I have this little ritual on a Friday afternoon if I'm working from home where I put on an Ozzy Osbourne album for the last hour of work and I tidy up my emails. Really love it.
Right.
And Friday afternoons, I get this email from, I'm not going to say who they are, but you'll guess. It's a faith-based adoption recruitment organisation. Right?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
One of many, so it could be anyone, right?
It could, yeah.
And I get these really jaunty sort of subscription. It's the end of the week, the weekend's coming sort of emails. And I got one the other week, and it was, I can't remember what it was about. Oh, it was an advert for their annual conference, whatever it's called, a summit. And it was like this.
You've just started them there, and you've just started them by saying that.
Oh, damn. Summit, damn. No, it's a conference summit. I misread it. And it was this really jaunty kind of, hey, it's going to be great. And we're going to do all these crazy, crazy things. And I was just feeling a little impish. But knowing that it was because it's a subscription email, it's just going to, if I respond to it, it's just going to get pinged back. But it caught me a moment of lucidity, and I set this email back going, thank you so much for inviting me to speak there. I just totally randomly thought I'll just pretend, and I welcome the opportunity to speak, and there's a range of things I would be more than happy to discuss with you, and sent it off. So it was like totally impish, knowing that it was just going to bounce back, and then it didn't bounce back.
It didn't, did it?
It didn't bounce back. And it was from, I can't remember the name of the person, but it's really jaunty and it's like really personal. It's the way the tone makes it feel like an email from someone, you know.
Yeah.
And then it didn't bounce back the next day, and I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. And then I kind of forgot about it. Then about 5 days later, I got this email going, hi, Al. I'm not sure whether you misunderstood our last And so there's this, you could see there's probably been a team meeting where they've gone, what do we do? This poor man's deluded.
Yeah.
So now I know that that's what happens to their emails when they send them out on Friday. So it's a bit of sport. So this week they sent me an email saying, hey, we're fundraising. Like they need more money, I'm sure. Do you want to do a half marathon for us? And I thought, I thought this is real good fun, this. So I emailed back and said, well, actually, I did a marathon this year. And seriously, I'm never doing it again for anyone. It's so tough. But I wish you really good luck. So that's my new hobby. Is that trolling?
I I think it's being bold, as they would say in Ireland. You're a bold thing, more front and bright, and replying to an email about a conference stroke get together stroke summit, and offering your service. Imagine if they come back and said, oh, well, we'd love to have you, but we're a bit booked up now, like full of embarrassment. Oh, Al, you're terrible. But I wish I had your boldness to do stuff like that.
I just think it's great getting older, because I just think, what they're going to do? Take me off the subscription list?
Well, that's true. I mean, that'd probably be a good thing in some ways. I'm just glad you didn't reply from me.
Well, that's maybe my next step. That's my next step. Okay, the news.
Can you do it to some other mailing list, not that one, please?
Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Yeah, anyway, I mean, nothing against them. They do a great summit, but no, not for me. Done it once. That was enough.
I spoke at the summit, but I don't think I'll ever get invited back after I swore on the main stage. But that's another story. So anyway, Anywho, lots to get through tonight. So tonight's a really interesting episode because I accidentally connected WhatsApp to our Facebook page, and then people started to.
Is that why I've not seen any of this stuff?
Yeah. I like to
do not change it to my number. If you change it to my number, I will hunt you down and kill you.
Oh, that would be fun. Shall we put other people's number in?
No.
Who could we put?
Oh yeah.
Who could we put?
Let's put Krish Kandiah's mobile number on there.
Dear Krish.
Or Mark Orrs.
Oh no, we'd get
actually, we like Mark. Well, we like Krish as well, but
it'd be more fun.
If we were rating them, Mark would be further up.
So we've got into rating our friends now. That's a really slippery slope. This is going to be a really long podcast because we've not even said what the topic is.
No, no.
Someone got in touch through WhatsApp and they said, have you done any podcasts about meeting birth parents at around the time of introductions, before children move in or after they've just moved in? And I said, actually, no, we've not. So let's do it. So that's tonight's episode is going to be, or today's episode, or wherever you're listening to it, is going to be about that. But we've got a few news items before we get to that. I think it would be worth going through. So Scott, what's top of the list? What's weddings, funerals, resignations?
Hatches, matches, and dispatches. That's what you call them, isn't it? Well, that's what we used to call them in Scotland. Oh. Hatches, matches, and dispatches.
Yeah. So what's in the hatches, matches, dispatches? Yeah.
Well, the dispatches. Well, let's start with dispatches. We got an email the other day, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, we got an email from who we call, and if she is listening,
we've got nothing to lose now.
Yeah, we haven't, but we call you Sabby because SAB and then put BYNN. So Sue Armstrong Brown is leaving Adoption UK.
Yeah.
So my ex-boss is leaving. Yeah, 5 years. And what's really interesting, so she emailed us, and it was really nice of her to email actually before they announced it. I don't think they were supposed to have announced it quite as quick as they did from what I gather from some sources. But I had my finger on my nose when I said I think I know. I think the emails were hurried out to the people that, maybe she needed to know. She wanted to know that she was leaving. Anyway, but what was interesting was that she emailed us personally to thank us for what we do, which is lovely. Thank you for that, Sue. But it's 5 years. Now, I worked with Sue for 2.5 years of her 5 years. And and Hugh Thornbury was there for 5 years before, but that felt like a much longer period of time that Hugh was there. And it's interesting because, Adoption UK has been through some ups and downs and rounds and turns and all that sort of stuff. But what I will say is, regardless of any kind of errors of judgment that's been made recently, maybe, which we've talked about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Having worked there when Sue came on, that charity was, it was Hugh left it in a reasonable condition, considering the financial issues that the whole of the voluntary and adoption support agencies had been through in the previous couple of years, with stuff going online, etc., etc. And Sue picked up and she's really driven it forward. It's now. It seems to be anyway. It seems to be a very kind of financially sound kind of charity nowadays. So well done to her for that. But, she said she's knackered and she wants to pass it on to somebody else. So, we can surmise about any other reasons. I've seen it all on Twitter. I mean, I don't post on Twitter a lot lately, but I do read people. I do read. And, there's a lot of kind of people making assumptions, accusations, all that sort of stuff. But can we just forget that? And, it's Adoption UK it was set up by adopters for adopters. It wasn't set up for any other reason. And do you know what? Yes, we could argue the toss about them not kind of doing enough for adopted people. We could. And I kind of agree, but I kind of don't agree, because actually, that was my place. That's where I got my support early days, on their online forums and then on Facebook pages and all that sort of stuff. So, had it been kind of opened up to the whole of the adoption community, I'm not sure I would have got that support. So we could argue that point, but we are where we are.
Well, yeah, and I think it's really interesting because there's this idea, isn't there, that there's a narrative on Twitter, to where we've seen anyway, in social media and in, I suppose, conversations, that people saying, well, you're there for adopters. And it's separating out it's kind of conveniently forgetting the fact that most, let's say it all, can we say all? Adopters are there for their children. It's sort of forgetting that if you support adopters, you're supporting children. If you are promoting adopters' welfare, you're promoting children's welfare. And that's been conveniently removed. You'd hope so. I mean, there'll obviously be exceptions to that, and then of course there is complicated
and
stuff. But
I mean, I do think the name has a lot to do with Adoption UK. It's speaking for the world in terms of the whole adoption sphere, isn't it? If you use a name like that, but potato, potato, tomato, tomato, it is what it is. And
I thought some of that stuff was very disingenuous. I thought it was really actually. On reflection, I was quite miffed by that, because I thought, I don't know Sue beyond your occasional conversation like you do, but I don't doubt her motivation one iota. That her desire is to see adoptive parents support their children as well as they can, and I think that's. But she also wanted to help the charity get to a place where it was robust and it was there for the next 50 years. It was 50 years old last year. It ended the year on a sour note. But look, it is what it is, and hopefully whoever comes along, can I just confirm, as per my tweet, thank you for all your DMs and messages, I am not applying for the role. It's not the time. I am not the person. I would have that place shut down from the spa weekends to the champagne Fridays within a week. So it's not the job for me, sorry to say. There's this slight confusion, I think, in some people's heads, that because we've got an opinion that we're actually competent.
Yeah, I know. and if I was correlate. Well, exactly. And also, by having opinions, you can have an opinion running a charity, I guess, but they have to be kind of substantiated and evidenced.
And just not justifiable to your trustees. Whereas our trustees we don't have any. That's exactly
No, we don't have any. So,
and our complaints department is a waste paper basket in the corner marked rubbish.
Yeah, exactly. Or you can WhatsApp Krish Kandai. We won't be putting his number online. Don't worry about it.
No, if Krish gets I think a fraught text on Saturday morning off his friends.
Exactly. And I was just going to say as well, we have to bear in mind the successes, just before we move on, in terms of what Sue's done. The adoption barometer, it's only a couple of years old. It was Sue that came up with that idea. I was there when it started. I remember the very early conversation. I was thinking, how is this going to work? This seems a bit silly. Actually, it works really well. Mm-hmm. We get a really good kind of view of what's going on in adoption land. They've covered some really good topics, from education to FASD to other things. It's coming again this year. Well, I think it's out now, actually, isn't it?
It is.
So, yes, we could look at a lot of the negatives, but actually, I applaud Sue for what she's done, and I think she has left Adoption UK in a really good place. And
absolutely, things are better with her. And we've got a little bit of an announcement, haven't we, as well?
No.
And why'd you say that, Scott? Why'd you say that?
I should have brought a sharp knife with me. Didn't bring it, but
what, to cut the wires on your microphone? Excellent.
You've got an announcement, Al, haven't you?
All right. So, like men with nothing better to do in their lives, we decided...
a man with nothing to do in his life.
Okay, fair enough. Like a man with nothing better to do in his life. A long time ago, we asked a children's minister to come on the podcast, and said minister... Well,
I can't believe you're actually saying this out loud.
Right. So this is quite a few years ago now, actually.
It is. I remember where I was when he cancelled. And so did you come at that.
I cancelled, if you remember.
Yes, you did. Yes, thankfully. Anyway, go on. Sorry. Spoiling your story.
We asked the children's minister if he would come on, and his team let him, because that's the relationship that was going on at the time between the children's minister and the powers that be. They said he was allowed to.
With no pre-meeting either. Just saying.
There was no meeting, but I probably have 8 hours of emails worth of conversation.
Yeah.
So a long story short, that meeting didn't go ahead for some very, should I say, those circumstances. I found myself in a court, in the hours that the interview was scheduled to happen, and it was child related. And it was not, I'd done nothing wrong. But let's imagine that I was supporting one of my children with a complicated set of circumstances.
Yes.
Ironically, in the very court that I'd adopted them in, this is this is when you used to have to take children before the judge, and they have to say the right things. So at the very same courthouse, I found myself in a complicated set of circumstances and could not attend the interview, so we cancelled it. 30 seconds later, he was sacked,
removed from office.
He was removed from office. There was a huge collective sigh of relief, and we thought, we dodged that bullet then, didn't we? It was pointless, all that effort and energy to have an interview, then for him to get sacked. Anyway, long story short, as if by magic, the words fell out of my lips again. I said, any chance of an interview with the minister? And they said yes, basically. So
that was a long way to get to the announcement, wasn't it? So basically, we are going to be interviewing the Children's Minister, Will Quince, mid-March, shall we say?
Yeah.
I think that's the fair kind of, early March, not mid-March, because that would be, just in case. But the good news is we had, and I think this is the difference, we actually had a pre-meet today with the DFE.
Some very serious people had some very stern words with it.
Yeah, and we didn't have that last time, which was interesting. So I think we should have taken a lot from that. But we had a pre-meet today, and we were offered the opportunity to give some ideas of things that we might want to talk about, and we were encouraged.
Actually,
to ask our listeners if they had any questions for the minister. Now, we're only going to have an hour with him, just to be clear. And knowing our listeners, there will be some with some really reasonable questions. There'll be some who we've already kind of covered that in the questions not the questions, but the areas that we want to cover. But there will also be some that kind of we haven't covered. So really keen to listen, to get some questions, some comments. We don't want anything about politics, about parties at number 10, nothing like that. And anybody who comes at us, you will just not have your question asked. It's that simple. If you're going to be angry about it, please don't. Okay? Be nice, play nice, and we might ask you a question if we get the chance. I'm just putting this out there because I'm just fed up. Like we did this with the care review, and people were just not very nice at all. Not to us, but so just please don't. I've not got the time nor the bloody energy for it this year.
Oh, but it's fun.
Got too much on. It's not fun. It's just horrible. So there you go. That is the condition. So Al's number is 07.
Yeah, I am apparently part of the Illuminati. I am part of the deep state cabal. I am the swamp. I am I am earning millions out of this. So none of that. But
that's what I was just going to say as well. This is our opportunity to actually put some really genuine questions to him. We're not getting paid. We're not part of the DFE. We're not funded by them. We don't get nothing from them, right? We fund this ourselves. Because that was one, I noticed even a couple of weeks ago, there was somebody retweeted one of our tweets and said, these guys, part of the DFE, blah, blah. No, we really aren't. So genuinely, if you've got a question, email it, DM it, or WhatsApp, because apparently we're on WhatsApp now as well. Publicly comment on it, all that sort of stuff. And we will filter them into categories and hopefully be able to ask them all if we get the chance. But we do only have an hour with them.
Excellent. So there you go. I'm quite excited about that, even though apparently he's very personable and it'll all be very good.
Yeah,
so it'll be
exactly.
Good. Cool. So now to a little bit of news, proper news. I have my contact, my secret squirrel, who sends me things, and I don't really know who he is, but he does. He's like occasionally I get these articles or these court rulings sent to me by this person, and they say, you may want to read this. And so he'll no doubt have questions for the minister. Well, I've told you it's a he, so that's 50%.
You have.
But he sent me an article at the end of the last year about the Somerset Judgement. So are you familiar at all with this? Have you seen anything of this on social media?
Absolutely nothing. And you sent me it. I had a quick read of it. I've seen nothing before this. And what I think is really useful is the fact that I don't know anything. So you're going to have to explain it so everybody else will understand it.
Well, I think it's an issue for prospective adopters or people who are pre-placement order, and for some people who maybe had just had their placement order or adoption order. So the issue was that there was a ruling at the end of last year that Somerset Council, 10 of their adopted children, and the adoption orders had gone through, but then it was challenged by some sort of eagle-eyed barrister who said, well, actually, I'm not sure that the procedures have been gone through appropriately. It was all to do with the medical advisor's input to the child protection, child permanence reports, sorry. And so because they hadn't had any input to the child permanence reports, it questioned whether the ADM's decision was legal. So you think about because you sit on a panel, you have a medical advisor. Yeah. But how long have you sat on panels? Because when I first sat on panels, we used to approve CPR child permanence reports. Used to sign them off.
I sat on panels that long ago, but also the medical advisor, the legal advisor, this advisor, that advisor would also sit on the panel as well, and that's kind of moved on as well, hasn't it? The medical advisor, legal advisors don't have to sit on the panels anymore.
That may be where this little blurred area is coming. So what Somerset have said about the 10 specific cases said that actually on review, there's no change. There's nothing that would have made them not made those decisions. But then they said, actually, there's 250 that have already gone through. And then this has sort of caused a ripple where other local authorities have started to look at their procedures and discover that some of them are also in this similar situation. So in some ways, it's for a lot of people who perhaps 2 or 3 years down the line, it's maybe not an issue. But I'm seeing online in the community groups I'm into that people's adoptions have been paused while everyone gets the paper and words. So that's kind of another, when we talked about adoptions numbers going down, that's another stall on adoptions, another pressure slowing adoptions down, but if procedures haven't been gone through, they haven't been gone through. It's got to do it right.
Well, I have to say, if it's not been done right, then it needs a review because, that isn't right, is it? We can't just assume that a medical advisor or even a legal advisor is just going to go tick, 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 go on without actually reading the case. Yeah. But I have to say, I think that, you've just mentioned panels there, and I only say this because this is my thoughts on it, but I do think that one of the reasons, not all the only reason, but one of the reasons that they took that obligation away from panels to have someone from the legal team or the medical advisor away was to minimize the number of people around the table. So they reduced the quorum of a panel. But I'm not sure it was... I don't know, that was based on feedback from prospective adopters who were going to panel, felt intimidated by so many people, etc. And I do sometimes wonder if it was the right thing to do, because actually as a panel member, I haven't, for one of the panels I sit on, I've never met the medical advisor. So, and I've been on that panel for a couple of years.
It is a tricky issue because I am aware of, not recently, but legal cases where adoptive parents have come back and said, stuff was known about my children's medical history, and this has not then transferred into, we weren't made aware of that. and the children we've got are not the children we thought we had, and the needs of our children mean that we can't. And I'll dance around confidentiality, but I was asked to be an expert. I mean, can you imagine me, an expert witness? That's one. I've just literally killed my career there, haven't I, by saying that? Can you imagine me, an expert witness?
Yeah. That's like replying to an email and saying, "Thank you for inviting me to come and speak at your summit."
No, this is a terrible CV. If I ever apply for a job, they'll just listen to one episode and go, "The man's a numpty." So I was asked to be an expert witness in a case like that, where there'd been concerns that medical stuff hadn't been passed on. And the impact on that family was catastrophic. It was lifelong, that they were, that the needs of the children were not manifest. And long story short, but that has been the case. And so you think this all plays into that, where people are going to go, well, hang on, you knew, maybe there was a history of mental health, or maybe, and it's the questions marks that are complicated for families, aren't it? If there's certainty around health conditions, fine. But so right, higgledy-piggledy mess that we don't particularly need at this time. No one needs this.
No, we don't.
Children don't need this. Hell, that's the Somerset Judgement. If you Google it, you can find some stuff out there. Coram Bath are advising agencies how to unravel this. So that's one of the things they're doing.
Oh, wow, okay. It is big of Coram Bath for doing that.
Yeah, they've brought the big guns out. I think John Simmons is on the case, and he's like the brain, isn't he? He's the brain of adoption. Bless him. He is. So to the main event, shall we get to the main event?
Yeah, let's talk about this, because I think it's an interesting topic.
So the issue is around meeting birth parents prior to adoption at the very sort of beginning. So I'll start with you, Scott. Were you asked to meet the parents of your children?
Interesting.
We fell at the first.
No, it's interesting because I'm just wondering how much to share, because it's not really I don't think it's my place to share it. But we asked if we could, and it went back to the children's local authority to see if that could happen, and et cetera, and there was dates made and all that sort of stuff, and it just never happened. It never happened. And I'm gutted now, looking back. At the time, I'm not sure. So this is pre-social media. Bear in mind, didn't have really a reference point, apart from one person who was adopted who came on our preparation. They seemed really happy and really well adjusted, and all those things that happen when you go on a preparation course, because everybody wants you to go through. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So we were really keen to do it, but it just never happened. And circumstances, very different circumstances the second time as well. I will say that. So the first time it was more a choice that was made by family just not to meet us. The second time it was kind of, there was medical reasons why we couldn't meet them. It wasn't COVID, because it was too long ago to be COVID. So I'm not in a place where I can talk about my personal experience, but all I can say is I'm gutted that it didn't happen. And I feel like if it had, we may have had a little bit more of an insight into life generally, but also had that kind of ability to be able to connect. Because I do feel that, we would have done some of the stuff that other people have done in terms of, maintaining more contact in a different way than just, popping a letter into post, lad, which is rubbish, let's face it.
I mean,
and reading through all the experiences, I mean, I'm quite envious of some people who have that kind of relationship. And we've talked to quite a few people in the podcast. I would love for us to have that kind of, just to have that position of, being able to do it. But it's just never been possible, sadly.
I think it's interesting that of all of the, when we asked for comments or questions, or we're doing this subject, can you give us a few thoughts? This is probably the one where we've had the most responses, which I thought was slightly interesting, really, because like you, and I think it's totally appropriate. We don't want to share the gory details of what happened, but like you, I was up for the idea of meeting the first time through, very much so. But like you would also, in retrospect, it was a very isolated time. You know, it's hard to imagine, isn't it, good to go back and think of a time where you just, all you had was your social worker.
Yeah.
And what they said.
That was it. Yeah.
Really difficult to get. And maybe the people you'd been through the prep course with, I know we kept in touch with a couple. But beyond that, really difficult. So I think that we were very much up for it. But like you, arrangement.
You don't have a reference point, do you? But you don't have a reference point particularly. I mean, no, a little bit different, because I would imagine, I'd hope that, you know, when going through the preparation and all that sort of stuff, social workers, etc., having newer experiences and more up-to-date experiences will understand that actually it's a really key part of it. You know, they might not be in a place to maintain that contact, but, you know, at least if you're kind of, you know, if it's almost compulsory in a way, I think it should be to some points, as long as it's safe to, you know. There's always context around that.
Well, I mean, I'll be really honest with you. You say safe, and I think that's a door that swings both ways in this case, because I think that I'm really conscious of my professional experience of working with families in care in North Newcastle, and seeing how immeasurably vulnerable a lot of the adults are who have their children removed, and actually to kind of waltz in, you're asking a really big ask, and it's predominantly women. It's predominantly young women with complicated needs, asking them to kind of rock up, but you know, in front of Mr. and Mrs. Nice, or Mr. and Mr. Nice, or, you know, whatever. You know, we're living a lovely middle class life, and everything's tickety-boo, and sit there and kind of give account.
Yeah, almost felt.
How do you do that? That's really messy.
Yeah, you've got a point with that. And I think that if you did it as an adopter, you would actually, there's probably equal amounts of preparation going into both sides nowadays, isn't it? Because whereas before it was just like, so, you know, just to help your child, we're going to make sure that you meet their new parents, and just to help your new child, we're going to introduce you to their birth parents, kind of thing. That was, you know, I'm not saying that's as far as it went, but that's what it felt like. Yeah. And I'd hope that that's going to change.
Yeah, well, I'm going to roll out some of the comments because they were really good. So Ray, who I may have been her social worker at some point or other, but that's another complicated story. But I think there's a statute of limitations on that. So that's maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And it was fostering, so it's a different kettle of fish. She said, be kind, listen well. And Kerry and Charlotte, and Charlotte actually recorded a really interesting piece. So at the end of this conversation, we're going to put on Charlotte. She's got the very last 6 minutes, and she kind of just really articulates some really good thoughts from a perspective of a birth parent. So Kerry, who's the kind of the other half, if that's the right way. Is that right? That's probably wrong.
Yeah.
She said, you know what I mean? She said, remember, it will almost always be more difficult for them than you. Talk to adopted adults to find out what they would have liked to have known as a child about their birth parents. Show them kindness. So kindness is a really common one there, isn't it? It's really difficult. Yeah. And I was looking, and there are some good resources out there. If you look in the Adoption UK website, there's you know, it gives I can maybe put the link in the podcast in the show notes, but asking questions, you know, about pregnancy, babyhood, family life, inheritance, really small details, but you think, for that parent, that's really, you know, what was it like to be pregnant with the child we've taken off you?
Yeah.
That's
what was your pregnancy like, etc., etc., and that brings back quite a bit of, well, it could almost be triggering to the point where they leave, that, you know, it kind of sends them back into a place that you don't want them to go.
So, I mean, I think that would be the thing if I was going to go back into it and do it again, and I think that's probably what was missing, is that I would really want to ensure that both us and the birth parent were prepared. And actually, I would want to let them know beforehand the questions, because to kind of bounce some of those questions on people, you think, oh, that's a kick in the pants. But
I think as well, Al, if we were doing it now, I think it would be very different, wouldn't it? Well, I hope it would be very different. I keep saying think. Hope.
What do you mean by very different?
I think that you would potentially want to have that first meeting as the start of a relationship rather than just a one-off to say, hi, we're your, to be blunt about it and patronize and say, hi, we're your kids' new parents. And, we just want to know as much as we can so that we can share it with them as is age appropriate. I'd love to think that, if I was doing it now, I would do it very differently. And I'd hope that social workers would support that and say, look, we just want to meet you today, but we would like to help our share child, and I don't know if that's the right word, but our share child in terms of, being able to nurture them and to, help them into the next stages of their life by keeping a kind of relationship with you. And whilst that might be hard for you at times, we'll understand that. If you don't want us in it, if you don't want us in your life for whatever reason, then, say, but you're, can come back at any time, etc. All that sort of stuff that we hear because that's the experience, isn't it? And I think that's kind of what I listen to when I'm talking to people who've actually achieved that or been through that process. And it's very much, it's not us parenting them. It's just us understanding that actually this is quite a traumatic experience for them as well. And whilst we all have our ups and downs and daily bits and bobs that we have to deal with, actually we haven't had a child taken off us and placed with strangers. And we aren't a child that's been placed with strangers and taken off our parents. So I think that's where the kind of understanding and empathy, I don't know if empathy is the right word because that feels a bit patronising as well, but unless you've experienced it, how can you you can't.
Do you think though there's an element of, because how did you, right, let's be really honest, how did you, because you've been matched with children, you've read their child permanence report, which has been signed off by a medical advisor, and to be honest with you, I remember being quite what's the word? A little bit cross. Is that the right word? Thinking, how did you let this happen? Some of the stuff that my children experienced. So was I a little bit callous? Was I a little bit caught up in my world? Probably. So it's an interesting point for both of us, isn't it? That like now, you and I, we're both however many years, decade plus down the road where that just stuff doesn't seem as... still get cross about some of the experiences of my children, but it doesn't burn as much. I'm not angry with the birth parents. I'm probably much more, my view of them is much more tempered and much more moderated by just getting older and being a bit wiser, hopefully. So I do wonder whether we're asking an awful lot of everybody involved at that time. Interesting couple of, Sean Bundy said, so she said, we had 3 questions that were forwarded by the social workers. They'd written the answers out, written the questions, and kept them for the future, really, but also kind of being able to articulate how difficult it was going to be for the parent. Because one of the comments we got back was, actually, don't expect that much because we didn't get that much. Mum couldn't remember.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, isn't it? Because you would be, I don't know, if you're a bit daft, then you might go into it thinking that they're going to be as excited about you as the fact that, they found their children a new family. No, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I saw that 20 years ago. I don't know about you, but I saw that 20 years ago. I mean, like documentary I was watching a couple of weeks ago of adoption many moons ago. There was a little bit of that threaded through it. And it's interesting because I watched it, and then by the end of the process, you could see that actually they were really hitting the reality, they were really hit with the reality of what it was like to have, children who they hadn't birthed come along and have a real impact on their relationship with one of the couples. And it was quite, I could relate to it in a lot of ways because, my experience was a couple of years later, but, thinking that you could change the world just by having these little people placed with you who you could make a difference in their life. And, yes, you do make a difference, but it's not the difference that you potentially think. And I just think that it's very difficult to, when I think about some of the panels I've sat on and some of the kind of written comments from birth parents about the adoptions and within the child permanence and all that sort of stuff, it's very difficult to kind of remove yourself from the thought that, the realities of what the child had experienced by being brought up in that environment, or, whatever it was that happened in terms of why they were removed. But the clear thing was that in the majority of times you could really feel the passion and the love for these children. It's just that they were unable to make that change in their life to be able to retain the rights to keep their children. And that's a really hard thing to read when your brain is telling you these guys really loved those children, but then you're thinking, but they did this and they couldn't stop doing that. That's hard.
It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you've read 100 panel papers or 100 files or 100 child permanence reports, imagine coming to that first without having read one before in your life. Really difficult, really, really tricky kind of situations. And I think that's where it gets very hard, because we started this conversation with me saying, yeah, we should do this and the next thing. And actually now I'm thinking, you're right. We have to think about the situation of people, everybody, not just the birth parents, but also the adoptive parents in terms of where they're at. And, social workers maybe knowing more than, dare I say it, more than is written on a bit of paper. I don't know. I'm just saying, sometimes that can happen. Sometimes, not all the time.
Dare you?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those comments are sort of, there's lots of comments, but what you've said there, I think, sort of is reflected. Julie saying, said that we had a really positive experience, but mainly because the social worker had set boundaries beforehand, and kind of sort of kept it really contained, because you could imagine it just this situation unfolding that became really negative, toxic for maybe one or two or everyone. Because again, it was interesting. I went to the adoption roundtable a few weeks ago, and one of the things that's really stuck in my head was something that Beverly Barnett-Jones said. She came on the podcast, talked from the Nuffield Observatory, friend of the show. I'd love to get her back on. We must get her back on. And she said often adoption is built around the worst case scenario, all of the risks and the contact issues around contact and conversations with birth family are built around the worst doom-laden situations. And those situations are there. We said, but most of it is kind of the other end. Most of it is kind of in the middle, where it's pretty benign. It's neglect, which is not. I'm not saying neglect.
No.
Right, and neglect. The impacts of neglect are catastrophic. They are catastrophic for our children, just as catastrophic as any other forms of abuse in a situation. But the people who are perpetrating neglect, there's a different thing there. Sometimes, right, there's willful neglect. Sometimes it's not willful. Sometimes it's ignorance. Sometimes it's people caught up with mental ill health. Things like 50% of parents who are children in the care system got mental ill health. Yeah. So it's just this, it's so easy because the media, the media wants to paint it as this, the general perception is that birth parents bad, adoptive parents good, and it's just not that.
No, and it really isn't. It genuinely isn't. I mean, but 20 years ago, I would have thought exactly the same thing, coming into the era of new adoption, because, we applied to adopt thinking that, it was children who'd been, I hate using the word relinquished because not everybody likes it, but relinquished children whose parents were this. And then we kind of had our eyes open very quickly in terms of the kind of children. And, and that's a massive thing, because the child's experience is very different. But what I do find interesting is when I speak to my children in terms of their relationships with birth families and stuff like that, and how they remember it, how they see it, what they want for the future, what they don't want for the future. And I can have that conversation with them. I don't know about you, but, two of them are adults. One of them isn't quite an adult, but we have a very, very open forum on this sort of stuff, because, let's face it, they didn't know they were adopted, similar to 3 years,
I kind of, it's odd because I'm the same as you. No, yes. Someone worked that out pretty damn quick. I find it really odd because I think that we probably have a similar sort of open door policy, which is more than just an open door. It's like right, we've come through the door and we're going to talk about it.
Exactly.
It's just there. It's just in front of our faces all the time. And I was thinking about, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Elaine, but Elaine, I think, is very much similar. This stuff is on the table all the time because it's so present. And I just wonder, is that normal? Do you think we're maybe not normal?
I don't know if it isn't. I don't know if it is or isn't, because actually to begin with, it felt very foreign. You know, I didn't feel comfortable to begin with, but I felt that it was a subject that we needed to talk about. Now, maybe not so much with the older two, when they were as young as Jacob is. Jacob's only just 15 and a half, so he's got real thoughts on things.
I've met him. He's got an opinion on that lad.
He has. And when we're talking opinions, we're not talking about having a debate about it. We're talking about he has opinions and that's it. He's not swayed by them in any way, shape or form. But I'm not so sure we were as open with the older two so young. But actually, having witnessed their experience of being back in contact with birth family and all that sort of stuff, actually it just needed to be done. It needed to be acceptable that if it happened, if Jacob wanted it to happen to, if he went and searched, or if mum came or dad came in search of him, that it happened, and he shouldn't feel bad about it. He shouldn't feel that he's done anything wrong. All those kinds of things, because I'm very, very keen for him not to feel the guilt. But I know that he still feels the guilt. He doesn't say it, but I know he feels it, because of course he would. He's a human being at the end of the day, But I never want him to think that it's as a result of this, that, or the next thing. And when he wants to, I'm kind of there, and he does it all the time. Sometimes in the most weirdest places, just start talking about random stuff with adoption that's random to me, not to him, obviously, but it's obviously been on his mind, and it's like, boom, there's a question gone out. But the interesting thing is, with the older two, they used to try and shock us with stuff like that. Not with Jacob. Jacob just comes out with it, and we deal with, we talk about it. Is that a change? I hope so. Should everybody be like that? I would like to think so. But I don't think, if you had a 3-year-old place, that you should kind of start talking. How do you feel today? Are you all right with these strangers that they've moved you in? But that kind of stuff. I don't think that's kind of the way that should be. I think you should let them have their childhood, but just be open to it as they go through it. But at 15, 16, maybe even as young as 13, maybe, I'm not saying that's appropriate, but, maybe just those conversations need to be in the forefront of our heads as adoptive parents, to make sure that, the children actually feel comfortable with the whole thing from as early as they have an opinion on it. Well,
yeah, I mean, we're a little bit off the beaten track, but I think
we are very much
a little bit off topic, but we'll get back on. Well, I'm sure we will. But I mean, like I've got a 28-year-old to a 6-year-old. I've got everything in between. And if I'm talking to the 28-year-old about her experience, it's, there was this huge call for peer support, for adopted people. And we've kind of all, just the nature of the number of us, that we've got that. So it's, 10-year-old looks at the 28-year-old, the 25-year-old, the 24-year-old, the 17-year-old, the 16-year-old, and goes, are you telling me there's a different way to be? Are there people living something different somewhere else? Is there an alternative to this? Because all of her siblings are formed by genes and law, and so it's just on the table. So we talk about it all the time. And
and having been to your house and been to when all 6 of them are together, it's there. We'll sit and have adult conversations with the adult people about this and the next thing. And, even in the, maybe 4 or 5 years that I've been visiting your house, I've seen such a move in terms of their progression as well. Not least because 2 of them have had children, but also their experiences. And, you were talking about the previous minister, and I remember said young person, shall we say, who was in that courtroom, and now, like 5-6 years ago, wouldn't have really been able to hold a conversation with that person because, wouldn't be in the right place. But now I can sit and have a proper, real, full-on conversation about anything, and, not just adoption stuff, other stuff as well. So, that's how it moves on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think that I think there probably are lots of families out there, but again, it's all child led, and I think that we've just created.
Yeah.
You've created your own version of normal, and it's our version of normal, and the people that got that as well.
Yeah.
We are a little bit off point, aren't we? But
we are a little bit.
We've got meandering.
I don't know. People will probably relate or not.
Yeah, but I think it's just that perception of birth parents, because I think what's interesting now is that I've still not met my adopted children's birth parents. And I've met lots of people around and all that, but I've not. And it's kind of coming, it's looming towards us. And I just really regret not having met her right back in 1999, which is a long time ago.
It's a very long time ago.
It was a very long time ago. And I think that just listening to people who've had that opportunity, I think it's sort of it has informed their contact, which was what you mentioned, that letter writing, you're writing to a person, an individual, and hopefully writing back. I mean, you can go onto our Facebook page and you can see all of the answers that people have written. There's a lot of really practical stuff, and there's a link on there as well to the Adoption UK. They've got a resource there with lots of different things. But I think that everyone generally says it's a positive thing. Having said that, I think there is one person who said actually it wasn't a very positive experience at all. I'm just trying to find the comment.
That's organised. Just well, this isn't sponsored, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's one person who said actually they had it and it just it didn't. And whether that was maybe just down to the nature of the circumstances, or whether it was just not facilitated particularly well. But I think if I was if I was going into it now, I would kind of really want this to be like a military operation. I wouldn't want just us thrown into a room, but you would hope that social workers would have the practice experience to kind of make that work well and do stuff. Oh, there's one person here talks about having photographs.
I agree.
Well, get a photograph with your birth, but all of that, you can feel it. I have total empathy with the biological parents.
Oh, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Look what you could have won.
I do as well. I mean, but this is it. This is, I don't know. It's such a murky area in a lot of ways, but it's also, cut and dry in some ways that you should, if you can, but we know that not every birth parent is going to be in the right place for this. And if they're not in the right place, we don't want to inflict any more pain on them than what they're already experiencing. And it could take 2 years, could take 3 years, could take 5 years until they're ready. But actually, if you get that call in 5 years to say, I'd like to meet you now, then, crack on, do it. Because, if they're in the right place, you might not be by then.
Shadow of your former self.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, I just think, I mean, I can't go into any detail. I wish I could, but number one, it's not my story. And number two, it'd be giving too much away in terms of personal kind of details and stuff. But if it happens for us, I will grasp it and I'll run with it at the kind of speed that person wants to go with it. Sorry, both people, because actually, we're talking about a young person who has a say in this as well. And, we need to bear that in mind when they get to a certain age that actually, they might have an opinion on it as well. So, but I just feel like it would have done us a lot of good to have met them when they were ready. And I wish it had happened, but sadly it didn't. And, that's why it's not something I preach about, but I do wish things had been different.
It is so complicated. I mean, we're moving towards a position where we're going to meet, and it's, like I say, 20 odd years later. But and you mentioned it before, about in relation to Jacob and the complicated feelings it raises in him, but those feelings are really still complicated in my adult girls who are looking. And they're, they are, they're in late 20s. And I had this, I can't remember, again, it was another, I think it was Dawn Harker. I'd had that conversation with her, and just really dawned on me that my child, my adopted child, may not go looking because you often hear about children not reconnecting until their parents are dead. And I thought, oh, that's awful. That's, if that's...
That is awful. That is for so many reasons, and that was what I was trying to hook into earlier, was that thought for me that my sons might wait until that point and then go, right, we're free. I would never want them to wait that long.
We've got the inheritance and we're free.
Yeah, exactly. But I would hate to think that because of something that I said when they were little, or something I'd done, that they felt that they could never do that, because that would just, I would have failed as a human being, not as a parent or anything like that, but as a human being, to have that kind of, I don't like that.
The thing that Dawn really just sparked something in my head, and she sort of articulated really well. And I can't remember the word she used, but she said, it's not that I want to, it's that I feel loyal, and there's nothing they can say.
Yeah.
I feel a loyalty towards my adoptive parents. And I had to really think that through and think, well, actually, that really is manifesting, especially one of my daughters. Yeah. And I had this conversation with her. I said, it is not disloyal.
Yeah. No.
But again, here's another quote. I'm always I'm like a sponge at things, and I can't remember where I heard it, but someone said there's this moment where you stop being the picture and you become the picture frame in relation to your children, and it felt like that in relation to adoption of my children. That actually, when they're little, the stories it's with the main players. And it was just the sense of, actually, you need to go and do what you need to go and do now. And I'm happy to meet or not meet. I'm happy to go with you or not go with you. I'm happy to... Whatever you want is the thing that's going to make me the most happy, and really try and reiterate that and reinforce that. And I think that's going to come. It'll come when it comes, really. That my children are meeting their mum now, seen her a few times. And what I've noticed in our language, and this is well off point, but I've started to purposefully call my children's mum, but in context, they know what it is. And it's like a little experiment. So I go, well, your mum, when your mum was young, this happened, and you can see that they know who I'm talking about. And it's really odd, and not your mum, but your mum. And they go, all right, yeah.
But I think they're really perceptive and really catch on to stuff like that. It's no different to, when thinking about two dads. The boys knew who we were talking about very early days because of the tone that we used or whatever, and we knew who they were talking to as well because of how they spoke to us and stuff like that. So I think it's a bit of instinct in there, but that's so true.
So if they say, "Go, your dad wants help with his train track," which dad are they?
No, not to come at me.
And your dad's made you dinner. Who is it? It's you.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much.
Oh, it's funny. Fun in games. So, I think we sort of danced around that a little bit.
We'll never cover. I was going to say we'll never cover the topic in full without. I often feel like when we talk about things that we don't necessarily have personal experience of, we're kind of commenting on something that we don't know about, but how we might have liked it to have been. So it's an interesting one, and I think both of us at some point are going to go through that experience, maybe much later than we thought or hoped in the beginning, but. If it, similar to you, I'm very much like, don't feel any obligation to me or to, anybody actually. You had, you had a family before we even knew you existed. So, that's, it's a funny one. It's a funny one. It is.
Well, I think it would be appropriate that we left it with Charlotte, who was on the podcast at the beginning of last year, Charlotte and Kerry, who did. And Charlotte is very kindly, she put together a little, sorry, that was a little person crept in there. Did you see them? And they put the phone on the desk for me to charge.
I didn't even see them. So that little person went under so that they weren't seen on the screen, just in case. Oh, you've got them well trained, honestly.
Oh, she's camera shy, bless her.
Parenting 101 right there.
Yeah. don't interrupt my podcast. That's parenting 101 around here. And we have to turn off all the lights so that the electricity works and things like that. No, so Charlotte is going to come on, and I asked her like really quickly off the hoof, and so really generous of her to kind of put some time in, because I think when you've got someone who's got direct lived experience, it comes at a cost to share any personal stuff like this. So she's got her views, just a few thoughts from the perspective of a birth parent, which from the horse's mouth, as it were. So we'll put that on, and we'll not return. We'll just put it on, and people can listen, because I think it speaks for itself. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and before we do go, just a reminder: Minister Will Quince. Middle front end of March. Any questions? Send them in, and we have another guest as well, don't we?
I said the email address is illuminati@dfe.co.uk.
Yeah, so if you want to send on an email, anfpodcast@gmail.com, send it by DM or WhatsApp or whatever your connection is. Feel free to ESP it or whatever.
Letter.
Yeah, send a fax. And we forgot as well, so we got excited about Will Quince, but we've also got another friend of the show coming back very soon, haven't we? Who has a new book out, who we haven't spoken to. Actually, going to pin her down on this because she's been very elusive on social media as well. Well, she hasn't connected with us. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we've done something wrong. Maybe we said something wrong.
Hard to imagine.
Sally Donovan is coming back on maybe mid to late March as well, isn't she? With her to talk about a new book, which we are in the process of having. Yeah, which is interesting. So we're waiting on that to be to wing its way through our letterbox, and we're going to be talking to Sally after what must be 18 months, 2 years, I think, since the last time we talked to her.
Yeah, at least.
Shocking.
She's been in her southwest hideaway, probably.
She has, with her crayons by the looks of things, if it's a children's book. So yeah. Look forward to talking to her about
dismissing a whole genre there. Fantastic.
No, I didn't mean it like. Don't stop putting bloody words in my mouth, man.
Anyway, Charlotte, thank you so much. So, Scott, Bon Jovi.
Anchovy.
And I'll speak to you soon.
Aye, lads. Aye.
So, hi. First of all, I just want to say it's great that you're covering this topic. I guess it's a big step for anyone who's wanting to meet the child's birth parents. From a birth parent's perspective, there's a lot of things that will be going on in their heads. Obviously, it wouldn't have been an easy process that they would have gone through. So emotions are going to be all over the place. And I think that's something adoptive parents are going to have mixed emotions about as well, knowing that their child has been through what is potentially a stressful situation. For birth parents, give us time, and please be respectful that we are going to have mixed emotions. It's not easy. It is really not easy. We're going to have questions, and we're not always going to have the support that adoptive parents will have in terms of like an adoption social worker. Quite often, birth parents, as soon as it's the court's decision, we have our goodbye contact, and quite often there is no support left over, so we may not know what is right to ask, what questions we can and cannot ask. If you can, write down the questions that you have for birth parents, but don't always expect the answers straight away. If you are open to the letterbox contact, those questions can be asked further down once all the height of the emotion has been sort of processed in a way, because that way questions may be easier to be answered, but also answers might be given, but please respect that we're not always going to have the answers. I was really open when I met our son's adoptive parents. I knew from the moment the court made that decision, I knew that it was never their fault. I couldn't be angry with them, and I had to respect that they are going to be the mum and dad to my child. And in fact, one of the first things I said to them was, thank you for looking after our son. I do appreciate not all birth parents are going to feel that way, but an openness towards involving the birth parent in contact, in questions that the child may have, allowing the child to know about the birth parents is a big step for a lot of things. It means you can ask questions as like, what time was the said child born? What did I weigh at birth? It's little questions. They are okay to ask. They may not be the best thing to ask straight away, but they are questions that definitely can be written down and passed on to the birth parent, who then relay back. I would say ask questions about the actual birth parent themselves. I would say the biggest thing to ask is, how are they doing? One thing that our son's adoptive, like his mum, done for myself, was a photo of him, and I gave them a set of books that I had brought our son when he was born. Maybe so long as obviously there's no risks or there's no safety concerns, a little something on behalf of the child, or like a little photo, may be an okay thing to give the birth parent. I mean, I appreciated that, and it made a big difference to how I then started to look forward to, like, just waiting for that envelope, waiting for that letter to come through the post. Look at the way you start to consider how you're going to do contact. But I guess that's all situational differences. I cried. We cried. I cried a lot when I met our son's parents, when I met his mum and dad. I gave them a hug, and reassurance. A lot of it comes down to reassuring the birth parents that their child is okay, their child is happy, they're safe, they're growing well. Depending on the age of the child, they're enjoying school, they're enjoying nursery, they've got friends, they've got cousins, they've got brothers and sisters. It's important to the birth parents just as much as it is important to the adoptive parents. Don't be afraid. Everyone's going to have high, mixed emotions. It may sound cheesy, but it is not about the impression that you make. Don't make it forced. Don't put on a smile just because you have to. Be open and honest. Be transparent. At the end of the day, you're all hoping for the best outcome for the child. And if that means you meeting the child's birth parents is part of that, then that's only a bonus. That's a story you can go away and tell the child when they're older, like, oh, I met your birth mum, or oh, I met your birth dad, and we spoke about this, we talked about that, they shared this memory, we shared that. It's all in the benefits of everyone, but just be open and honest.